Hello one and all, welcome back to ArcheAge Inspiration, now broadcasting from my new location on Growlgate Island. Bacon, my guild, has decided to go pirate for a while to earn the special titles you can get as a pirate, and otherwise just to shake the game up a little bit for us. And so from now on, my exploits will be recorded here and on Aurora, since I will still need mobs. I will not be able to go to Rookborn quite as easily to, to have some targets to mess around with. So today's rolls are 2, 8, and 9. Let me head over to the Priestess of Nui right here and see what we have. So 2 is defense, 8 is archery, and 9 is shadow play. This is a stone arrow. Already know this class. Cool. I know that this is a pretty well established archetype, so I'm going to try to do something that's along the lines of what you would normally expect a stone arrow to do, and then also try to mix it up a little bit. So let's get to work. Okay, let's take an initial look here at the stone arrow. One of the things I noticed when I was messing around with this, I mean, I've run into many stone arrows out in the wild. I have a friend who plays stone arrow, and I know that it's a very powerful class. One of the things that I noticed is this set of skills here, these 3 particular skill trees, in combination for the stone arrow are very point hungry, meaning that you have a lot of things that you could be doing, so you have to be very particular about what you do actually grab. It's very similar to the Skull Knight, my favorite build, in that it needs to make sure that every point that you're putting into it does the most that you can get out of it. This may just be my initial conception of it because I haven't got a lot of experience with stone arrows. Some people may think that there's only one build, and that's their prerogative. But I feel like there's a number of different ways you could play the stone arrow depending on your style, depending on the situation. So if you choose to play a stone arrow, and this is definitely considered to be one of those quote-unquote top-tier builds, I would prepare 2 or 3 potential different builds to switch between based on what situation you're in. So what I went for here was just sort of a general use, slightly more offensively geared stone arrow. Out of defense, we are only grabbing Redoubt, which gives us a huge block rate and immunity to push or knockdown, making us a lot tougher to kill by anybody who's melee. They can come in and they will not be able to push you or knock you down. And of course invincibility, because it's just awesome to be able to pop it. Group play or solo, you can use this to your tactical advantage in a number of ways. For archery, we have sort of the standard archery package: charge bolt, piercing shot, elected to get concussive arrow, not necessarily mandatory but very useful. Endless arrows, of course, which you pretty much need in order to be able to use as a filler, intensity and double recurve for buffs, and a bevy of passives here that are going to make our job a lot easier. Move speed, range accuracy and range crit and crit damage, bow range, decreased cooldowns for all of our abilities, and a straight up archery damage boost. Out of shadow play, I went a little deeper into the melee part of shadow play tree than I think a lot of stone arrows probably do. I went ahead and grabbed the piercing passive here to give us even more crit rate, 10% for 8 seconds after I get a successful melee or range crit. Judging by the amount of endless arrows that this build will pump out, more than likely this will be proccing quite often. We have Overwhelm, which is sort of a get out of jail free card. If somebody's getting close, we can Overwhelm, combo that with Shadow Smite to shackle them, and then we can drop back out and get back out to the range where we're more comfortable. Stealth is always useful. Free Runner for its extra mobility, Shadow Step for mobility and utility, and of course Toxic Shock and Stalker's Mark to boost our offensive capabilities. As I mentioned, there's a number of ways you could play this. You could go deeper into defense, making yourself even more of a close range fighter. The Shield Slam into Bull Rush combo is a very, very nasty thing to deal with on the receiving end, and a good way to get somebody off of your back if they get close. Refreshment and or Toughen combined with Revitalizing Cheer can give you some extra health. As I understand it, in later versions of this game, Revitalizing Cheer in particular gets buffed quite a bit to give you not only a small health boost, but also 100% of your stacked metal. If you are under the effects of Refreshment and Toughen both, you get 1 metal per 1 damage, so this can actually be used to restore all the damage that you've taken, granted on a 45-second cooldown. This could lead to a significantly expanded health pool. You could take Boast for Roar for a little bit of extra damage if you combine it with Refreshment. If you really want to, you do have to get fairly close, but the debuff that it inflicts as well is very nasty. So if you do get into a melee situation, you can say Overwhelm, Shadow Smite, do a Shield Slam into a Bull Rush, Boast for Roar, and then backflip out and do everything else. Olo's Hammer is also a potential option. It does only have a 15-meter range, but it could be used as a ranged interrupt. If you see somebody casting an arc lightning at you and you have no other way to interrupt it, a thrown Ollow's Hammer will effectively interrupt that spell. A few of the passives here as well are notable, of course, Supplemental Block, possibly Shield of Steel if you need more physical resistance, and so on. There are a few other interesting gimmicks you can get out of the Stone Arrow class package. I've shown some of these off in the past, but it's worth noting that both Imprison and Boneyard encase people in a physical barrier. Boneyard's is much smaller, it only surrounds a very small area around somebody, but it does make them so they can't leave that area unless they actually break the barriers by interacting with them. Likewise, Imprison is a much larger area, but is likewise impassable. The only way to get out of either of these is to glide, which of course is not possible in the arena. But one of the more clever things you can do in the arena, if you really want to buy yourself some more time, is you can imprison yourself within the same area as your enemy. You can float, if you choose to grab float, lifting you up into the air, and then you can drop back out of the bubble, leaving them encased in there. So you have a 20-second window wherein you can wait for all of your cooldowns to return, and otherwise just regain yourself in a combat situation. Even in World PvP, this can be very viable because in the heat of the moment, it's often impractical to be able to glide out of an area. So there's certainly an option there. Also, while you are a close-range fighter as an archer, I would wager that in a very close-range situation against a lot of casters, they would feel a lot less comfortable than you would in a one-on-one confrontation, depending on their build, so that can be another option. Other things include Missile Rain, always good for long-range fights if you need a little bit of extra poke, and a number of other passives and abilities. All in all, this is a very tried and tested and effective build at what it does. It's very good in PvP. It's even pretty good in PvE. The damage output is more than satisfactory. I would highly recommend using leather, potentially plate, but most likely leather. You're going to want to use a one-handed shield pretty much any time you pick up the defensive tree, with the exception of possibly if you only want to go 1 point into defense for, say, invincibility, you could then neglect that and go dual wield instead, which would boost your DPS a little bit, but not a ton. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and finish off one of these mobs here real quick. Just going to kill one of these elites if I can with my super awesome archery skills, of which I have pretty much none. Click some buffs because I'm no good. So, there's a number of different combos you can use as an archer. I don't really claim to know the optimal setups on what you're supposed to be using and when. So right now I'm just kind of using the abilities as they come up, but the kiting ability is quite good, especially with the extra mobility you'll get from a lot of your things, such as 3-runner. You can also do the shadow step, which gives you even an extra movement speed boost, allowing you to really get away. So without too much trouble, you can very easily kite mobs. Of course, I'm not very good at it, but very clearly the tool set is here and available for you to do all that sort of stuff. So I have another interesting take on the Stone Arrow that I want to show off here in just a second. This take on the Stone Arrow is a little different. Stone Arrow is quite capable of kiting mobs in a PvE environment. In fact, a lot of the bosses in GHA, one of the most commonly run instances, are very much kiteable and can be done so with the Stone Arrow, Primeval, or pretty much any build that has archery. But unfortunately, when you do employ that sort of situational setup, what's going to happen is your tank will be relegated to trying to do some DPS or something. And depending on their build, they may not be as successful at that. One of the beautiful things about the class system in this game is that builds can tend to be more open-ended instead of saying, I am just a tank, I am just a DPS, and so on. But throwing that aside, it's very typical that you'll want a standard MMO tank for a group in Greater Howling Abyss. What I've attempted to do here with the Stone Arrow is to provide a build that is not only capable of kiting any of the bosses, if it needs to be done, but also to be able to stand toe-to-toe with the regular trash mobs and provide enough of a tanking and threat presence to be able to hopefully hold threat and keep their group alive. So what I've picked up here is a increased presence in defense, including Shield Slam and Bull Rush. We're keeping Readout and Invincibility for obvious reasons. Refreshment and Boastful Roar also were picked up. You could actually swap out Boastful Roar for Mocking Howl, which may not be a bad idea, as your AoE threat will not be the greatest. Likewise, Ollow's Hammer will help with that as well as an option. Supplemental Block and Guardian are two mainstays of the tanking suite, getting your extra block rate and a permanent increase to aggro generation. If you feel like you're going to do enough damage or otherwise generate enough aggro, you can drop Guardian, but I think it's a pretty safe bet. Charge Bolt, Piercing Shot, Endless Arrows provides you with enough to hopefully be able to kite things successfully. A few interesting choices here. Boneyard allows you to essentially do your own crowd control. If you have a pull of 3 mobs or so, you may be able to trap 2 of them within a boneyard to make the cleanup of the rest of them quite easily. And we have Concussive Arrow and Missile Rain both as options to pull the monsters to you. Missile Rain does a phenomenal amount of damage, and Concussive Arrow will shackle and do an AoE as well, dealing a ton of damage and inhibiting the monsters from attacking you. In Shadowplay, we pick up Rapid Strike as a spammable melee attack. This gives us the option to continually apply the Distressed status effect, which is very nasty, likewise obtainable from Boastful Roar. This will help make you far more tanky against the target you're attacking, assuming they are vulnerable to that status effect. Stalker's Mark is grabbing just for general damage boost, because you do want to still do as much damage as you can. It's kind of optional, but you do need 4 points in Shadowplay, and I think this is a wise choice. We pick up Dropback for extra maneuverability. Anytime we are out and about trying to do kiting, it's always good to have extra mobility. And likewise, Free Runner provides us with mobility and some extra agility, making us a little bit more evasive. As far as the passives for Archery and Shadowplay go, we have Consecutive Evasion, which gives us a 16% melee evasion rate for 7 seconds after we successfully evade a melee attack. A standard and flat 8% evasion rate from Archery, 8% move speed to make kiting easier, and extra bow range just to make things more convenient. You could probably get away without this, but I chose to grab it. Like the previous take on this build, 5 more points could certainly be spent. Again, options include Olo's Hammer, Mocking Howl. You could possibly pick up more damage with Double Recurve. This was very hard to leave this out because it is a flat damage boost, but the other things I think in Archery are just too important to pass up. Also do note that Snare is not only a snare, but it also reduces any physical and magic damage you take by 20% for 3 seconds. This may seem largely insignificant, but any amount of damage mitigation you can get is worth it. This only has a 24-second cooldown as well, so in any particular case where you're getting low on life, you can pop this and potentially save yourself. And just to give a quick example of what the evasion and block rates might be, let me head up to this commander here. Set my hotbar up real quick to get my melee swing thing here. I'm just going to walk right in. I'm going to start swinging and applying that debuff. I'm going to pop my 2 defensive cooldowns. Bring out my display here. As you can see, my evasion rate is 30.5%. My shield block rate is 58.8%. Depending on how this goes and continues, actually, I just missed my blocks. There we go. Back up to a 89.3% chance to not take a hit just with those 2 alone, not factoring in parry rate. Granted, that is temporary. As you can see, now that I've dropped my readout, my shield block rate is significantly lowered. And these things will eventually fall off, but with proper cycling between these extra group support and the application of any debuffs and anything you get, you're certainly more than possible. It's certainly more than possible to actually keep a very high mitigation rate against normal attacks. These will also be proccing significantly more often where I attack more than one target. You can see that the skill damage that is being induced here with the Mark of Distressed abilities is quite substantial, making you even more tanky. So that's really all I had to say about the Stone Arrow in terms of its abilities. Quite a versatile set of classes. It's of course always going to be inevitable, as this thing's probably going to kill me. I'm going to try to kill it. It's inevitable whenever you do these sort of things that I will end up, getting to classes that are sort of considered to be high tier, and this is without a doubt no exception for a class that is extremely well balanced, powerful, and just generally useful. But hopefully my insights into what is possible with the Stone Arrow have enlightened you to some of its other options. If you'd ever thought of it as a PvE tank, I think it's got some serious potential here, as I'm about to get killed, just because I'm not really paying attention. Oh, I missed my stun. My stun. No, I needed that. Glide away. Cilantro. Glide away. Anyway, that's it for the Stone Arrow. Thanks for watching, guys.